from Adat Haverim in Plano, and I'm here tonight to tell you a story. And this is a story of three brothers who lived by themselves in a small cottage off by a wood. And the way that they made their living is they would go out every day into the woods and try and find something that they could come back and sell in order to earn their living. Sometimes it was some wood, maybe it was some berries, who knows? There's lots in the woods that you can find. Well, one Friday, they were going out into the woods in order to find something to be able to sell and get ready for Shabbat. And they had trouble finding something. They kept going, and there wasn't much, and they kept going a little bit more and a little bit more, and pretty soon they found out that they didn't recognize where they were. They were kind of lost. And they weren't that worried. I mean, they were familiar with the woods, but it was almost Shabbat, and they wanted to be home for Shabbat to be able to celebrate. So they kept going, and off in the distance, they found a light that was just glowing there. And they said, well, it may not be our house, but at least we have some place to go for Shabbat. So they went towards that light, and there stood a little house. And in front of that house was an old woman leaning on a walking stick. And she looked at them and she said, guests, visitors for Shabbat, how wonderful. Please come in. I'm almost completely ready for Shabbat now. Oh, how wonderful to be able to find somebody out in the middle of the woods to take them in for Shabbat. And so they walked into her little house, and she said, there's the table, and it's almost all ready. And they looked, and there was nothing there. I mean, they were like, it's an empty table. But okay, they came in, and she took her walking stick, and she went once, twice, 3 times across the table, and just like that, it was completely spread out with a white tablecloth and candles with candlesticks and a challah and wine and chicken and gefilte fish and soup and all the different kinds of things and cake, everything that you could possibly want for Shabbat. And she said, please join me. Welcome for Shabbat. So the three brothers sat down and they celebrated Shabbat together with her. And it was just one of the most wonderful meals they had ever had. And she said, come, there's a place by the fire. You can lie down there and sleep. And then in the morning, we can celebrate Shabbat. And so they celebrated the whole of Shabbat together. And then on Sunday morning, as they were getting ready to go back and try and find their way home, they thanked the old woman and said, this was the most restful, wonderful Shabbat that we have ever had. I can't thank you enough for what you have done. And that walking stick, the way it just created a dinner table with everything on it, it was amazing. She looked at them and said, well, if you really want it, I can give you this magic Shabbat walking stick. But before I do, you have to do something for me. I want you to go up that path, and if you go past a little bit of a stream, there's a big apple tree. And if you can bring me the very best apple from that apple tree, I will give you this walking stick. Now the oldest brother said, I can do that. You guys wait here. I'll be right back. And he goes walking down the path, and he jumps over the stream, and he goes and he sees a big, huge apple tree. And it is one of the most gorgeous apple trees you have ever seen. It was just filled with beautiful, crisp apples. And he looked at it and he said, which apple would be the best? Well, I am the oldest. I am the tallest. It must be the apple at the very tippy top of the tree. That must be the best apple. So he climbs all the way up to the top of the tree and he grabs the tippy topmost apple and he takes it and he puts it in his pocket and he goes back down and he goes walking and he gets to the stream, and as he gets to the stream, there is a butterfly fluttering right in front of him. And the butterfly says, "Oh, please, sir, please, could you please help me? I'm starving. I'm so hungry, and all I want is a little bite of that apple. Couldn't you give it to me? I'm so hungry, and I'm tiny. I'll barely take a bite of it." And the brother looked at the apple, and looked at the butterfly, and looked at the apple, and looked at the butterfly, and looked at the apple, and said, "No, I need this apple." And he jumped across the stream and he went up the path and he went to the old woman and he said, "Here, this is the best apple." She looked at the apple. She said, "It's a good apple, but it's not the best apple." And just like that, he was magically transported back to his own home. Well, the second brother said, "I'll try. I'll do better than him." And he walked up the path and across the stream and up to the tree, and he looked at it and he said, "Boy, these look good." And he grabbed one. Oh, a big juicy bite. It was sweet and delicious and just so flavorful. And he was just like, "These are good." And he grabbed another and put it in his pocket. He grabbed another and put it in his other pocket. He was munching on it, and then he was like, "Oh, that was so good." He took another one and he ate the other one, and he only had the one apple left. And by that time, he had gotten to the stream. And what was at the stream? The little butterfly. "Please, sir, I'm so hungry. I'm starving. Won't you give me a bite of that apple that you have? I'm small. I'm nothing. I won't have much. Please, can't you share it with me?" And he looked at the apple, and he looked at the butterfly, and he looked at the apple, and he looked at the butterfly, and he said, "No, I need this apple." So he jumped across the stream, went up the path, and went back to the old woman and said, Here is the best apple." She took the apple and looked at it and said, "It's a good apple, but it's not the best apple." And just like that, he was magically transported back to his own house. Now, the youngest brother said, "I can't do worse than my brothers, so I'll try." And he walked up the path and he went across the stream and he saw the apple tree and he looked at it and he said, "This is the most magnificent apple tree I have ever seen. Baruch Ma'aseh Bereshit, praised be God who creates all of creation and such beautiful things." He said, "It's such a beautiful tree. I don't even want to pick an apple from it. It's so beautiful. And look, here's an apple that's just lying on the ground. I'm sure it will be good enough." And he grabbed the apple off the ground and put it in his pocket. And he walked back. And he finally got to the stream. And what was there? It was the little butterfly saying, "Please, oh, please, I'm so hungry. I feel like I'm going to die. Please, can I please have just a little bite of your apple? Just a little bite. I'm small. I won't have much, please." And the youngest brother looked at the apple and looked at the butterfly and looked at the apple and looked at the butterfly and looked at the apple, and he said, "I need this apple, but you need it more. Here, take a bite." And just as he leaned out to give the apple, just like that, the butterfly transformed into the old woman. And she said, "This is the best apple, because it's the apple that you were willing to share." Now listen to me. This is the magic of the walking stick. If you share the bounty that it provides for Shabbat, it will never fail for you. But if you should ever say, "No, I need it for myself," and not be willing to share even when you have plenty, it will only be a stick. So if you want it, you can take it, but promise that you will always share what you have with guests for Shabbat. And the youngest brother said, I promise, I will. And he grabbed the stick, and just as he grabbed the stick, just like that, he was transported back to his own house. And he told his brothers the story, and he said to them, from now on, we will host every guest who comes by for Shabbat. And that's what they did. And they always had plenty. Plenty of guests and plenty for Shabbat. I hope you enjoyed that story. Laila Tov, everybody.